Hi, Ann. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. It's time for another installment here of Ask Eddie and Ann. Um, I have to comment. It looks like we're wearing the same glasses.
Oh God, they're really similar. I didn't
They're
notice.
really similar, but I just want everybody to know that these are not really my glasses. These are glasses that I got because I stare at the computer so much.
Yeah.
I just got these glasses that have a little, whatever you call that, resistant thing to the rays
Yeah.
from the computer.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't cost me much. So anyway, not my real glasses, but we look like we're doing a thing, like we're coordinated.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see this red mark, but
Yes.
yeah. So this morning, like my alarm goes off, and Ellie, which is one of Brendan's cats, runs to the bedroom and slams into my face, like so hard it like broke my skin.
Oh my God.
I
So
know.
that's a visiting cat
Yes.
punched you in the mouth and
Essentially, yes.
with its head. I mean, that's how,
That, but it
that's what they do.
really friggin' hurt.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's was what was the intention behind this?
I think she was excited for breakfast.
That's fun. It's funny. And then I promise all of our loyal listeners that we'll get off the cats and move on to something else. But it's so intriguing to me because, uh, next month will be sometime in the first 2 weeks of April will be Tizzy's 20th birthday. And she, we have never had a cat. We've had 5 or 6 cats, Kathleen and I, in our lifetime. We have never had cats cry for breakfast ever. Like for dinner, yes, but not for breakfast. And now Tizzy has begun this. At like 6 o'clock in the morning, she just goes into the kitchen and she just wails until I get out of bed and feed her. And then it's kind of a toss up as to whether I'm going to stay up or go back to bed. I realize this is part of her long goodbye,
Yeah.
because she just wants to eat all the time now because she clearly has something kind of wrong with her. But
Yeah.
it, it's so bizarre because the first thing a vet will ask is, does she have an appetite? And it's like, when doesn't she have an appetite? So it's a mixed bag. Anyway, so if you hear some crying in the background soon, it'll be because it's
Her.
close to her dinner time right now. But Kath is downstairs and she's on Tizzy duty right now, so that's good. Shall we jump into it?
Yes. Uh,
Okay.
this is from our friend Alan from, I can never pronounce this. San
San
Anselmo.
Anselmo.
I don't know why that's, I have a, like, I see those words. I just can't do it. Eddie, I know you know your stuff and are well prepared, but do you ever get nervous before interviewing a celeb or before a large live audience? Sinatra even had nerves every time before going on.
uh Thank you for the question, Alan. And by the way, I waved to you the other day because I drove through San Anselmo the other day with Kathleen. We took a little road trip last weekend up through Inverness and Point Reyes and Bodega Bay. Said hi to the birds, uh, and all those points in there, and drove back through San Anselmo. And I was just pointing out to Kathleen all the places that don't exist there anymore that I remember as a kid. Because I think I mentioned this before. My folks had a little place in a town called Woodacre, which is just north or west or something of San Anselmo. And yeah, it's much, much bigger now than, oh, there's the way you make an entrance.
That's the
Ta-da!
prize fighter in the family that punched me in the face this morning.
Okay, way to go. Headbutt. I mean, should be disqualified for that.
She should be.
Okay. The answer to your question is no. I don't get nervous. You get a little amped, you get a little excited. and I kind of work at tamping that down sometimes. No, I have to be honest that I don't, because I'm um, the only time it would maybe be a little nerve wracking is sometimes, and it's never the case with Noir City events because I'm totally in control of it all. The At TCM, there are occasions when a host has to pinch hit, like something happens, either there'll be an emergency, uh, they'll lose a guest, or something will just change because we have to switch around who's interviewing who. And sometimes that's kind of like, oh, really? I have to do this. I remember one time at the TCM festival, somehow I ended up interviewing Burt Bacharach, where clearly that was a Dave Karger thing because Dave is the music guy, right? Um, but it ended up being one of my favorite things that I've done at TCM because you know, you, I listened to Burt Bacharach music my entire life. So it was just, talk about an easy interview. It's just like you go back in your mind and it's like Walk On By was like the first song of his that I think I knew that, wow, the person who's singing that, Dionne Warwick, or I believe it was, wasn't the person who wrote it, but you just learn early on, that's a Burt Bacharach, Hal David composition, whatever. And then you just, that was easy. It was just connect the dots, the windmills of your mind, and raindrops keep falling on my head, and all the way up to him doing stuff with Elvis Costello. So uh, I just, I very easily switch from expert mode to fan mode. And I find that interview subjects like it when you're enthusiastic about their work. That's all that really matters. So that's it. I mean, no, I don't get nervous.
Yeah, and he was Marlene Dietrich's arranger for her one woman show.
That's right. That's right. We talked about that, I believe. And yeah, and also, you do get, at the TCM thing, you're supported by, if you want it, they'll give you all kinds of background info,
Yeah.
that you kind of cram. But I don't try to do too much research because I would rather that the interview proceed naturally. It's not like I'm eager to get to the next point. I think that's the trickiest part about doing an interview is is being prepared but looking like it's totally spontaneous. So you don't want cards or, I never want to be caught looking at a card when somebody's speaking to me to trying to remember, oh yeah, what was the next question I wanted to ask? That, I think that looks kind of bad
Hmm.
on stage, and like you're not really listening. And I find that the most important thing to asking good questions is to really listen to what the person is saying and then just make a natural connection. Nice, right in the lens. Very good.
Sorry,
Okay.
she's really misbehaving.
Okay, she's heard enough of that answer. So let's we'll move on then. Um okay, this is Joe. Joe from Suffolk County, New York. Alan and Joe are like mainstays here. They
Yeah.
ask a lot of questions. Um okay, and this is kind of a long setup here. So here we go. Oops, if I can get it right. With the usual carefree optimism I share with most noir fans, I detect sarcasm. I did an internet search for Build My Gallows High by Jeffrey Holmes. The top link was Amazon, which offers a used hardcover for $700 and the used paperback for $59.45. Searching further, I found the used hardcover being offered by Buckingham Books for $1,750. Remembering their collections of Hammett, Goodis, and MacDonald, I tried the Library of America website. No go. How do Build My Gallows High and other hard-boiled fiction fall out of print? How would you compare the mission of the Film Noir Foundation with that of the Library of America? Are there other organizations or individuals working to get hardboiled and other noir related fiction back into print? Am I truly concerned about the loss of access to this artistic movement, or am I just being a cheapskate? Well, Joe, I mean, let me just put it as succinctly as I possibly can. Build My Gallows High in no way, shape, or form is worth $1,750. I mean, it's just not that good a book, right? I don't care if you're a collector or whatever, fine, but it is not worth that kind of money. But then again, nobody is buying that as a reading copy, you know. So I'll cut to the chase on this one. If you want collector's editions of things, and that's your deal. You want to own the collectible version, then try Royal Books. Kevin Johnson has a company called Royal Books, and he auctions off all kinds of ephemera, movie scripts, books, photographs, all kinds of wonderful stuff. And he's got very, very good taste. He's done a few books, volumes that he's collected of first editions of books that noir films were made from, and he's just put that out as a book. It's almost like saying you're never going to own this book, but here's a picture of the first edition of this book. If you want to read the books, I would suggest a company called Stark House. I believe the fellow's name is Greg Shepard. I'm embarrassed. I should check because we've exchanged tons of emails over the years. And Greg does essentially what you're asking about the Film Noir Foundation. Greg does it a little more in a more, how shall I say, less formal, more organic way than the Library of America. And my old buddy Jeffrey O'Brien used to be the editor at the Library of America, and he wrote the great book Paperback America. I think that's what it was called, Paperback America. Actually, he's written some of my favorite books, The Phantom Empire, Hardboiled America. And Jeffrey was singularly responsible for getting all those hardboiled writers into those Library of America collections. Before Jeffrey, the genre was not considered worthy of the Library of America, but he is the guy who got Chester Himes into the Library of America, and obviously Hammett and Goodis and Woolrich and these other his collections. So that was great. But Stark House actually does reprints of classic crime novels. So I believe Build My Gallows High is one of them. But Greg is doing terrific work there. He advertises in our Noir City programs every year. You've seen the movie, now read the book. So it's Stark House. So just look them up on the website, on the internet, and you can go to their website. And the books are not expensive. They're fun editions. Most of the times the covers are from the movies. But not everything that he does, not everything he reprints is because it's a movie. He's done a lot of, he's turned me on to a lot of writers that I didn't know about before. So that's your answer. Those two. If you're collecting, go to Royal Books. If you just want to read the books, go to Stark House.
Okay. And this is David from Carmel Valley, California. I was a traditional old school projectionist after high school in the 80s at a revival house with a lot of classic art house titles. I remember having to show horribly damaged physical prints. Some were only available in 16 millimeter. They were scratched, had frames missing, fading, etc. I love now that films are available digitally in wonderful new scans. I feel that a lot of the love for 35 millimeter prints is just nostalgia. I admit that there's a difference, but digital files are 98% as good in my opinion. I'd rather watch a pristine digital copy of a film from the 1940s than a battered physical print any day. I get no emotional feeling watching one versus the other. That's just me. I want the best copy available. What is your opinion on 35 millimeter prints versus DCP in terms of exhibition?
Good question, David. That's interesting. Uh, After high school in the 1980s. Okay, so that tells me how old David is approximately, and I appreciate that he's using a very accurate. It's a very accurate use of the word nostalgia because I only think that people who don't get 35 millimeter are people who didn't grow up watching 35 millimeter, right? So that's why you can't see the difference. The difference is because you want it to be like it was in your youth, hence nostalgia, right? I really do. I okay, I can answer this question. Of course, this is a subjective viewpoint, but having been like right in the middle of the transition from film to digital. Remember, Anne, how we used to advertise the films at Noir City saying not on DVD, not
Yeah.
digital. You can't find this digitally. And we made a big deal out of this is showing in 35 millimeter. We still do make a big deal out of it, right? Um, but obviously, I have had a front row seat to this transition, and can tell you that when it's began in the late whenever it was like 2008 and 2009 when they first started to say, well, we show this digital version of the film instead, it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Yeah,
They
it
hadn't
was.
figured out how to do it properly. Right now, um I have to agree largely with David in saying that, yeah, I would take a 4K digital restoration of Sunset Boulevard over a beat to hell 35 millimeter print of it 100 out of 100 times. But I do get what was special about 35 millimeter, and I think what is missing for the people who experienced it, for the people who became cinephiles watching film, what is missing in the digital realm is the human aspect of it. To me, that's more important and more significant than the picture quality, because there's something about exhibiting movies and knowing that there's a movie projector and that there's somebody showing you the movie, that it's like there's almost an inherent risk in it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know when we're recording this, we haven't done it yet, but at the Noir City Festival, we're showing a nitrate print of Roadhouse. That's a huge deal, right? There are only several movie theaters in the United States that can show nitrate film. And so what you're dealing with is really the expertise of the projectionist to be able to do it. You're dealing with the idea that people sank money into that projection booth at the Egyptian Theater in order to preserve the experience of seeing nitrate, which does look different
Mhm.
than digital, right? I mean, a 35 millimeter safety print, most of them aren't that well made, right? They're not timed right. I mean, I don't want to get in the weeds here and talk about all this stuff that the average person doesn't understand or care about. But, black and white prints need to be timed so that they don't, every scene is different. And if the print is made properly, there's a timer and a color grader and all these things that go into making the print look perfect. A lot of times, circulation prints, which are all that are left of these 35 millimeter prints of movies, they weren't properly timed. It's called a one light pass, and they just do the same amount of exposure on the entire film. They don't do it scene by scene. And those are pretty junky, to be quite honest with you. They don't give the best representation of the film. So the technology has advanced, but I still kind of miss the fact that there was an art to the showing of the film as much as there was to the making of the film. And now, if you go to a cinema and see a digital version of the movie, the big advantage to the movie theater is that they can have the same person who's selling you the popcorn showing you the movie. That's why they love it. They don't like it because there's an art to movie projection. They like it because the guy with the butter on his fingers from the popcorn machine is very often the same person that's operating the projector up in the booth, right? And they don't have to be there for every reel change. They start the movie and then they go back and sell you more popcorn, which is where they're making the money. So, I mean, that's the answer, right? Do you notice a difference, Anne, when you're watching 35 in a theater versus digital? Does the difference mean anything to you?
I mean, I think if it's a good 35 millimeter print, it does look good. There is something to it, and definitely with nitrate, especially nitrate in color. I mean, the
Yeah,
first time I saw a color film in nitrate, it was like breathtaking how
yeah,
beautiful it was. So I
yeah.
really feel that very strongly with nitrate. But yeah, but it's gotten better because it used to be like you could really tell, like it just didn't. The early digital projection did not look good, but now I think it looks really good. Like it's really funny, yeah, because like I go over to the Metreon to see stuff, and the prints look great.
But they're not prints.
They're not prints, sorry. The digital projection looks great, not the print, sorry.
Yeah, the DCP,
The
the
DCP
DCP,
looks great.
and quite honestly, I mean, the value for the theater owners and the studios is immense because that DCP is not going to deteriorate.
Mhm.
I mean, you can lose all the information or whatever, but it really doesn't matter how many times they show it. It's going to be the
Yeah,
same picture. I remember going to see what was it? Something here locally years ago. I went to see, I think it was Iron Man, and it was like the second day that it was out, and the print was already damaged.
yeah,
It was a 35 millimeter print, and because they were a non-union theater that was showing this, they were using a projectionist who was not a union projectionist, and I'll be damned if they didn't fuck the film up on day one.
yeah,
And that was the print that was going to be shown for the rest of the run. And it's like, I felt like asking for my money back immediately.
yeah.
It's like, seriously, you couldn't even get 2 days out of this print. Ay, ay, ay. So that's why they're digital now, you know. Okay.
Four.
Number 4. David Mamet's recent memoir, Everywhere and Oink Oink, which I have over here on the shelf, is a real hoot. And like all Mamet, it has real insights lurking amongst its embittered and dyspeptic anecdotes. Of course, the Film Noir Foundation gave Mamet the Modern Noir Master Award in 2020. First, did you enjoy his book as much as I did? And second, do you have any plans to recognize additional Modern Noir Masters? That's Kingpin Johnny, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, another stalwart here at Ask Eddie and Ed. Okay, I did like Mamet's book, uh, True Confession. What do you call it? Full Disclosure. David has become a friend of mine, and so I'm going to say I like this book, probably even if I didn't, but I did. I did. David is also funny because he's a cartoonist as well, and he has all kinds of cartoons in the book, uh, which are pretty weird. And he sends me a lot of cartoons. He kind of based on movies that I've shown and stuff like that. And Johnny, we have done other modern noir masters. And Mamet was not the first. Stephen Frears was the first. largely thanks to the grifters. And we've done Mike Hodges, and we've done James Elroy, and we've done John Dahl, and I'm trying to remember who else. I think there was somebody else in the mix there. We haven't in a while, because there are, and I'll just, this is the only time I'm going to ever admit this, so anybody watching, it's on the record. Um, I've kind of slowed down on that because there are some people that are totally deserving of this that we haven't been able to get to sit down and do an interview, which is the whole reason this started, right? The whole reason we do the Modern Noir Master was, I hope I'm not bursting people's bubbles or anything, but you do it because in order to get somebody to sit down and do the interview, you got to give them a prize.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like when they give a lifetime achievement award to somebody and they want to have a big dinner and make a lot of money. It's like you got to give them a lifetime achievement award, right? So if ever you're asking yourself, why did they give, fill in the blank, why did they give George Clooney a lifetime achievement award? He's in the prime of his career. It's so they can make money off the dinner. That is the reason you do it, right? And everybody in the business knows this is the case. So, why would Stephen Frears sit down and do an interview with the Noir City magazine, which he's never heard of, right? Unless you're saying, well, we're going to give you an award. You're going to be our modern noir master. Hey, it worked for him. It worked for Mamet. It worked for Elroy. It worked for Mike Hodges. Mike Hodges, rest his soul. When we first started doing this, we had Samantha Fuller, Sam Fuller's daughter, was making the actual award that we gave people. And I thought it was so cool because it's like, this is Sam Fuller's flesh and blood actually made this award for you. So appreciate it. And they did. And then we did it for Mike Hodges. And I told him this, and he called like 4 times. He was like, where's my award? I want my award. And I'll be damned if Mike didn't pass away before we ever got him the award. So, it would have ended up just being one more damn thing they would have had to figure out how to deal with after he passed away. But anyway, but what I was saying was there are people like, I'll just throw a name out there, Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader needs to be a modern noir master before anybody else. I mean, even before Martin Scorsese, Paul Schrader is a guy who is, to me, his best films are total extensions of classic noir, and he's one of those guys who built that bridge, from the classic era, then writing about films in the late 60s and early 70s, then writing his own films, then writing Taxi Driver, for God's sake, and then his whole God's Lonely Man series of movies. Those are all noir related films. So, Schrader is somebody that we need to do. But we haven't done it. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to give the award to somebody else before we give it to Paul. So there, now you know everything there is to know about the background of that little thing there. So
how do people get North City Magazine, Eddie?
They go to the Film Noir Foundation website, filmnoirfoundation.org, and they go to the contribute page. First thing they do is they sign up. You have to sign up. Give us your name and address and all of that stuff to be on the quote unquote mailing list. And then you get to donate some money, however you wish. And once we know that you've donated at least $20, that's certainly not the limit. You can donate $20,000 if you wish, but you're still going to get the same premiums. But you'll get a warm feeling all over knowing that you've contributed so much to film restoration and preservation. So that's how it works. So you need to sign up for the mailing list and contribute $20 or more, and then you can get the magazine, the digital version of the magazine, or you can buy the print edition when it comes out. on Amazon.com.
Yeah, I just want to bring up something because every once in a while I'll get questions about our YouTube channel, and we do not monetize the YouTube channel, so we do not put ads in that for ad revenue for ourselves, just so you guys know that. And we don't do memberships or anything like that. So if you enjoy us on YouTube and want to give us some money, just go to the filmnoirfoundation.org and just contribute there rather than we'd rather have the direct money that we don't have to split with YouTube. And also, I don't want to put ads in the show, so because I want people to be able to watch it without interruption. Then also, once again, with YouTube, like, subscribe, share the videos. That would be a big help.
Thank you, Ann.
Yeah.
And I am 100% behind you on the not monetizing the YouTube channel. If you want me to get on my soapbox, I will, but I will tell you that I'm sick and tired of every damn thing in this culture coming down to money.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're leaving money on the table. And it's like, yeah, because I did what I wanted to do. And if there's money left on the table, fine. Somebody else can do something with I don't,
Yeah.
because I just think at a certain point, monetizing everything is just tacky. It's just tacky at a certain point. We take the money that we get, we put it all into restoration and preservation of films, right? And it's
Yeah.
not curing cancer or anything, but that's what we do. And I'm really not interested in lousing everything up by everything being a pitch for money or everything having to have an ad associated with it or something. It's like, no. It bugs me when I'm streaming and I'm looking for a film and it's like, I got to watch this film for whatever, research or something. And I search for it on a streaming service and says, oh, look, it's free. And then there are ads in it, and it's like, I won't watch it with ads in it. I just, there was a relatively, I'm not going to say what it is for whatever reason, but there's a relatively big movie that I'm showing coming up pretty soon. And I needed to refresh myself on it. And I found it for free. And the way the ads are inserted is so crude. Here we are, we're super sophisticated now, right? Oh, we're streaming on demand. And the insertion of the ads in this movie was worse than 50 years ago on Dialing for Dollars, when the movie would suddenly stop and they'd start showing commercials. At least then there was a human being that actually figured out where to put the commercial. This was just like literally mid-sentence. They just cut away to a commercial. And it was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I've learned how to basically I have an ad blocker on Firefox. So I just now if I want to watch something, I play it on Firefox and then make my television into a monitor and watch it on so I can watch on the big screen but without the ads. So I was,
Well,
happy to figure that out.
You're more technologically adept than I am. I just get really flustered and angry about all of that because I'm getting dangerously close to going off on my soapbox here, but I just find it absurd that years ago we were told that cable TV was the way of the future and all that stuff, and then it was all going to be great for the consumer, and now it's just a total catastrophe because how many different streaming services do you have to subscribe to? It's kind of absurd. It's ridiculous. You got to pay $19.95 or $29.95 or something for a different service if you want to watch it, and they all know this. And now it's so expensive to watch this stuff, and they have total control over when they can yank it and not show it at all.
Yeah.
So what exactly are you spending this money for? Anyway, we better change the subject before I get my ass fired from my current job. So
that's a good point. And this is from Daryl, not our Darryl. After browsing through Tubi's film noir section, I recently watched.
Speaking of which,
I recently watched two movies I was unaware of. Witness to Murder, 1954, is a wild murder yarn with Barbara Stanwyck, George Sanders, and Gary Merrill giving it their all. And The Flesh Merchant, 1956, is a racy, low-budget cautionary exploitation flick with female nudity. Does Eddie have thoughts on these?
um, yeah, I'm surprised that Tubi got Witness to Murder. I don't know. But yeah, I'm very familiar with that film. It's good. It's good. George Sanders plays a neo-Nazi, or just a Nazi. I guess in 1954, you were still just a Nazi. You weren't yet a neo-Nazi. Um, yeah, that's a good film, shot by John Alton. And The Flesh Merchant is not a good film, but it's entertaining. It is kind of entertaining in a real cheap and cheesy way. And yeah, there's when you say there's female nudity, I mean the guy's only saying that because it's kind of shocking to see a glimpse of female nudity in a movie from 1956 if that isn't made overseas.
Yeah.
You can get it's actually, I think it's probably less nudity than there is in Rififi, but it's kind of startling to see it in an American film. But I The Flesh Merchant is for the hardest of the hardcore. Okay, here we go. Oh, look at this. This is from Bill in Winnipeg, home of Guy Madden, Manitoba. Okay. I know films noir, and I appreciate the fact that he spelled it in the proper way. I know films noir often follow the trials and tribulations of cops, crooks, and private eyes, but there are also times when these films involve other more offbeat professions. Timetable follows Mark Stevens as a postal inspector, not the only one. There's also Appointment with Danger, where I believe Alan Ladd is also a postal inspector. Edmund O'Brien is a by-the-numbers tough guy accountant in DOA and an insurance investigator in The Killers. In Crack Up, Pat O'Brien plays an art curator looking for answers. Panic in the Streets, Richard Widmark is a health inspector. He calls him a doctor. I think he's actually a health inspector, trying to track down a very sweaty, plague-riddled Jack Palance. What do you think are the most unusual professions of lead characters in classic or not so classic films noir? That's a good question. I wish I had time to think up a good answer for this. Do you have one off the top of
Yeah,
your head?
yeah. George Raft plays a florist.
Oh,
And it may be Johnny Angel. I can't quite remember which of his films it is, but he does play a florist in a film, which is really fun.
and then I don't remember his job, and I just remember that pretty early on he kind of masquerades as a sailor or something, right? To get on.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
But he also plays the head of a trucking company in Red Light.
Yes,
which is
yeah.
Kind of, and now it occurs to me that Red Light and Thieves Highway would make a great double bill because they both involve trucks.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And they're both set in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So San Francisco Trucking Company. I'm trying to think of another. There's a lot of writers. There's a lot of writers in noir. There's a lot of newspaper people in noir. And I'm just trying to think if there's like some weird profession that I'm going to say that one of the things that Kathleen and I, when we're looking for like new movies to watch, I will say that we immediately skip over any film where the synopsis says they're a writer or a magazine editor or anything like that. I will no longer watch a movie like that because it's always so wrong. And unless it's something like Spotlight or something or the Post, that's about the newspaper business, they always, whenever it's like, I have a job, I'm a magazine editor in New York and I live in this massive loft and all, it's like, no magazine editors I know in New York live in that apartment, trust me. So
Yeah,
they always think it's so much more romantic than it is.
Yeah, it's just that just made me think about Dragnet because one of the things I really liked about the TV series Dragnet is it's a much more realistic look at police work than we actually get now, where they're really showing like what it's like to deal with the public day to day. Like Adam, especially Adam 12, because they were patrol guys, and
Right.
just like people would say to him, "I pay your salary," and it's the stuff that it's so not. Neither of those shows were glamorous,
Yeah.
and they kind of showed the grind to it. You know what I mean?
Yep. I do know what you mean. And it's I know. I know that who was it? Bill wanted a clever answer to this, and I'm kind of struggling, and I don't want to draw this out to think of like the coolest oddball profession that somebody had. In a recent noir film that I love, El Aura from Argentina,
Yeah.
the protagonist was a
Mhm.
taxidermist, and I thought that was really cool, and it figures into the plot in interesting ways.
Yeah.
More character than plot, like why a guy would be a taxidermist and all this kind of stuff. Very, I thought that was very interesting.
Oh,
And
and DOA.
well, DOA, he's a an accountant, right?
Yeah, well, he has like a real estate firm.
Yeah, and he has to have. It's because he got the paperwork
Yeah,
notarized. That
yeah.
was, or he
He's a
isn't
no.
that
He's
it? There's
also a
a
notary.
he's a
Yeah,
notary. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, ensure anything that has uh in any way the job requires investigation. Cop, private eye, newspaper man, insurance investigator, any of that stuff, those are pretty standard. I mean, it gets really interesting when you have to get out of that and figure out a way for somebody to be involved in a mystery when they're just a normal person doing any kind of normal job. Then it becomes more of a noir story in some respects because you're just a guy. I just did an intro for. I'm going to be showing on Noir Alley pretty soon. The Steel Trap. Have you
Oh, I
seen the
love that
Steel
movie.
Trap with Joseph Cotton? Yeah, and he works in a bank. He works in a bank,
Yeah.
like Barry Sullivan in Loophole. Same thing. They work in a bank. They're just a regular guy working in a bank, but then they get mixed up in a crime. I'm glad you like the Steel Trap. That's a
That
pretty
is one of the
interesting
most
movie.
stressful films I have ever seen.
Yeah,
And I mean that in the best possible way because I don't want to give too much away, but basically the core of the story is this husband and wife have to travel back across the country and get somewhere at a very specific time. And it's like every single thing that can go wrong when you travel goes wrong in that film. And it's so relatable, and you have the muscle memory of it because we've all had these bad travel experiences. And I thought it was just like I was so stressed during that film. I was just so on the edge of my seat. I just think it's a great film. I really
it is.
do.
It is a really good film. You know what? You know how I describe it?
Uh,
Have you ever seen The Out of Towners? The
yeah,
movie The Out of Towners
yeah.
with Jack Lemmon and Sandy Dennis. It's like imagine The Out of Towners if Jack Lemmon had robbed the bank
Yeah.
and he was like carrying around this money trying to get to a safe haven and all this stuff just keeps going wrong. That's to me what the Steel Trap is like. Only Joseph Cotton does not have a sense of humor
At
the
all.
the way Jack Lemmon does. So it does start to really wear you down. His anxiety and his frustration at the simplest little things. And that's one of the reasons I really do love that movie is because here's this big plot, this big heist plot, and it gets waylaid not by nothing more than the normal inconveniences that we all experience in our life. But suddenly, when you're trying to escape with $1 million or something, like they're going to close the window in 2 minutes. You got to keep it open. It's great. It's a really good film. Okay, I
Okay,
think is it you now?
it's me, and this is from our friend Joe on Long Island. I remember Eddie commenting on the film Shockproof and how the title didn't really have anything to do with the film. Well, I just watched Hidden Fear with John Payne, and this tale of a U.S. cop tracking counterfeiters in Holland doesn't seem to have anything to do with the title, unlike, say, Angel Face or Out of the Past. So, what are a few favorite titles lacking any correlation to the movie's plot?
Well, all those virtually every one word title that they use is like what why is it called this, like why is Crossfire called Crossfire, right? I
Yeah,
mean, there's no reason for it to be called Crossfire. They didn't want to call it The Brick Foxhole because that was the original title of the novel, but that's not an attractive title. That's not going to
yeah,
bring people into a theater. So they end up going for these one word titles. Like I even make a point about this in an upcoming introduction. I think it's the movie Cornered with Dick Powell, where I say I have no idea why this movie is called Cornered, right? The movie should be called Rat Lines, which is what it's about. It's about the channels where Nazis were smuggled out of Europe and into South America, the rat lines. And that should have been the title of the movie, the Rat Line or Rat Lines. But they didn't want to put rat in the title, so they used Cornered instead. I've never understood why um, oh my god, what's the movie with the color noir from the mid 50s with Rhonda Fleming and Arlene Dahl. It's called
Love's Lovely Counterfeit.
correct. That's the book.
Oh, that's right. They changed the
They
title.
changed the title for it's a James M. Cain. It's called Slightly Scarlet.
Oh, right, right, right.
Slightly Scarlet. I have no idea why it's called Slightly Scarlet. Other than the two actresses are redheads, and I think they just wanted to get something red in the titles, so it's Slightly Scarlet. And no idea why. Um, yeah, why is impact called impact? And they even open it with a dictionary definition of impact, and it makes absolutely no sense, you know. So, do you have a favorite of the like? Why is it called that?
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
most of them are great. Great noir titles. I Wake Up Screaming is a great
it's a great
title.
title.
This Gun for
Even
Hire is a
technically, I
great
Wake
title.
Up Screaming has nothing to do with the story. It's just a
No, but
great
it's a
title.
great title. Yeah, and yeah, Hidden Fear. Hidden Fear. The just a little anecdote about that movie. John Payne uh, was the first person to buy the rights to an James Bond novel.
Yeah.
Right? He bought. I think it was Moonraker. I think he bought the rights to Moonraker, which I'm not positive, but may have been. I think Casino Royale was the first Bond book. I can't remember right now. The first Ian Fleming book with James Bond in it. But Moonraker, I think, was second or third or something. But John Payne bought the rights to it because he wanted to play James Bond. And when that didn't materialize, I think he made this movie Hidden Fear with Andre Detoth, who's normally a pretty good director. I think it was almost like, see, I should be James Bond or something. And this was way before the Broccoli family did Dr. No and the whole thing. So anyway, we'll see what happens now that James Bond is the property of Amazon. We'll see. We'll see what
Yeah, we'll
happens
see
with
what
that.
happens. Yeah.
Um, Maybe Jeff Bezos will play the part himself.
You can play the supervillain.
No, Elon Musk will be the supervillain.
There you go. There you go.
He already, yeah. I do believe that Rami Malek, when he did the picture with Daniel Craig, right, whatever the last Bond film was, I think Rami Malek was actually playing Elon Musk in that movie. I mean, he looks like him,
Yeah.
kind of, so
Well, Rami Malek's better looking, but yeah,
yes. Oh, I agree completely. But I mean, I think it was almost like
that's what he was
was
doing.
was this an intentional thing? Anyway,
Okay.
uh,
8.
I better stop or I'm going to get in trouble. Okay, me. This is from Kevin. He enjoyed, well, this one definitely shows when the thing was written. He goes, I enjoyed Woman in Hiding last week, which means this was like over a year ago that he wrote this question to us because I can't remember when I showed that on TCM. But whoa, I was not prepared for that slap of Peggy Dow's character, which certainly gives the Sidney Poitier Endicott slap, that's in the heat of the night, a run for its money. This is sort of a lighthearted question. Why was the Ida Lupino character rowing the boat? I burst out laughing when it was on the scene. I think he must mean on the screen. I don't know. I was expecting the man to be rowing. Can you recall any noir movie scenes that just make you laugh? Well, um, I have to confess, I'm not entirely sure what Kevin is talking about here. Do you know the scene in question where
It's been a couple years since I've seen that movie.
Ida's in a
Yeah.
rowboat, and obviously somebody else is she's rowing and not. I'm going to assume it's either Stephen McNally or Howard Duff
No.
that would be in the boat with her. Um, any scenes that, and I'm curious whether uh, the laughter would be provoked because it's something totally incongruous as opposed to something intentionally funny. Um,
Yeah, because I mean, the one thing that always makes me laugh is I think it's Woman on the Beach with Joan Crawford, and the guy's trying to come on to her. So he says, like, how do you like your coffee? And she said, alone. And her delivery is just so
yeah,
great.
but see, that's an
But that is
intentional
intentional.
laugh.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
yeah, and that's female on the beach, not
Female on
woman
the
on the
beach,
beach, female on the
not woman on the
beach.
beach, female on the beach.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's stuff that cracks me up in films all the time, but I sense that Kevin is not asking about intentionally funny things, but things that are just like, what the hell? Um, I wish I could pick one out of. I mean, I always crack up at Frank Jenks in High Wall when he plays the drunk in the bar with Robert Taylor and Audrey Totter, and he ends up becoming a huge plot point in the film, and it's like all of a sudden I've seen that film sometimes where he gets out of the cab and goes into his apartment building, and it's like I kind of wish the movie followed him
Yeah, yeah.
because he's so freaking entertaining in that film that it's just like I just want to watch this guy get through a day. That would be enough to watch Frank Jenks try to navigate a day loaded as he was. Okay, rather than stall here while I try to think of something, I'm gonna move on because I can't really think of something totally incongruous that's also funny because we all notice the mistakes and the gaffes in movies, that Tom Neal is going the wrong way when he's coming west and Detour. It's like why is he traveling the wrong direction? Why, the cars are traveling on the wrong side of the road and all that stuff. That's just they got backed into a corner and they had to fix it. And
I
that
don't
was
really notice stuff like that. I'm usually too, if I'm really into something, like it's so weird because people like will point out all these like mistakes and stuff, and it could be stuff I've seen a ton of times. And it's like, yeah, I never noticed because I was too caught up in the story to notice things. But
that's good. That's a
yeah.
really good sign, that it shows that the film is working. And in 9 times out of 10, you can obsess over some little detail. And, that's just so true. It's just like nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to notice. Just do it, you know? I never forgot. I think the most important lesson in movie making ever, ever was learned from this book, which just happens to be sitting here. This is a Hitchcock Truffaut book, where Truffaut was asking Hitchcock at one point in that interview, like, how would you script this so that the audience will believe that this person got from point A to point B? And Hitchcock said, "Oh, we'll just move the camera there." And he said, if you show the audience something, they'll believe it. It's like I don't need to motivate everything I do. I just put the camera there and show it to them, and if it's the right actor and you're doing it right, the audience is going to believe it. So that has served me in good stead many times when I've gotten stuck, whether I'm writing something or it's just like if you can't figure out how to do it cleverly and believably, just do it anyway and move
Yeah.
on, and people will believe it.
Okay.
Is it you now?
Yes, this is me now, and this is from our friend Carlton in Atlanta, Georgia. Are there any films in the 40s and 50s that are far from what one would consider noir, but have a cast that would have made a great noir film? Sorry, that's from Doug of Doug and Laura fame. Carlton said, "What non-noir movie has the most noir cast?" So I kind of put them together.
Okay. um you go, Anne, because I got to think about this. Do you have any ideas on this?
Yeah, it's a Douglas Sirk film, and oh God, it has tomorrow in the
There's
title.
always tomorrow.
There's
There's
always
always
tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yeah, because
And,
it's Fred McMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Joan Bennett. Yeah, that's a good one.
yes, and I brought it up because I want everyone to watch that film. I love that film so much.
Yeah, it's a great movie. That was a favorite of Ileana Douglas.
Oh, really?
I think it's actually been in the Noir City magazine.
Oh,
Ileana one time did a. We haven't done it in a long time, but we used to do that department called Five Favorites,
yeah, yeah.
and we would get, people of note to tell us their five favorite noir films. And I distinctly remember Ileana putting that on the list and then hemming and hawing, saying, "Look, I know it's not noir, blah, 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 but it's so great. And, they're so great in it. And Douglas Sirk and blah." So we'll call it an honorary noir in that respect. Well, the one that sticks out for me because it came right in the middle of a run of noir films, and I don't consider it to be a film noir. A lot of people do. I know that our friend Foster Hirsch did the audio commentary for the DVD release of it, and it's actually showing at the TCM Film Festival coming up in April. Is Daisy Kenyon,
Yes, it's a great
the
film.
Fox film, with Joan Crawford and Dana Andrews and Henry Fonda. Now, Henry Fonda, you know, is not somebody that you really think of as a noir actor necessarily, but that film just drips with noiritude, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
But it's not. It's just a melodrama. It's just but Otto Preminger directed it, and it's a good movie. Um, but because it came between Laura and Fallen Angel, and then Where the Sidewalk Ends and Whirlpool, and these obvious noir films that Preminger made, Daisy Kenyon gets like honorary noir status, even though I don't really think it is.
I don't think it's
So
a noir at all, but
yeah,
I really like the film anyway.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good movie.
no,
So those are our two. I think those are two good choices: Daisy Kenyon and There's Always Tomorrow. They're dark melodramas, but
yeah.
they're not film noir. Okay, this is from Britt in Lynchburg, Virginia. Uh, I would love to know how your interactions with the extraordinary women you wrote about in Dark City Dames changed you as a person. That's a big question, I know, but whatever you feel like you could share, I would love to hear. Well, thanks, Britt. You're going to be you're going to be hearing this a lot lately because the promotional thing for the new edition of Dark City Dames has begun, and so I'm doing interviews. I don't think any of them have aired yet, but they certainly will be airing. Yeah, I mean, I talk about this a lot in the afterword to the book. The book is very similar. The foreword is the same. The introduction, I mean, is the same, and the profiles of the six major actresses that I interviewed are the same. But there's an afterword where I talk about this very subject. Mostly, it had to do with if anything cemented my approach to writing about movies, it was doing this book and realizing that the movies are made by human beings. I know that sounds stupid in some respects, but I write about I write about movies from the inside out now, as opposed to like a lot of critics who write about movies from the outside in. Like they don't have any kind of inside information, nor do they care. They're just talking about the movie. They're critiquing the movie. Well, that ceased to interest me a long time ago. I'm interested in how did this movie get made and why, and how did these people collaborate? Did it work? Was it a difficult thing? Whatever. So talking to these people, the biggest change it made in me was the transition from, oh, I get to talk to these movie stars that I love, blah, blah, blah. That was gone in 15 minutes. That was over with. And then it was just, this is this person who did this for a living, and how odd. Because after the first interview, I was no longer talking to this actress who was in, like with Colleen, she was in Kiss of Death and Nightmare Alley and all the, the Killing and all this stuff. And none of that stuff actually really mattered because I was listening to her talk about herself and her life. So that was it. The book made me a much, much better listener than I was before I started writing the book. That to me was the key. Because I remember going into it and thinking, am I going to know the right questions to ask? And then at a certain point, it's like, they're the same questions you'd ask anybody. The
Mm-hmm.
point is to listen to what people are saying and to really understand what was important to them and to understand the points they wanted to get across. As like, let's talk some more about The Killing. Let me talk to me about Stanley Kubrick's directorial style or whatever. I realized very early on, like, they don't really want to hear that. I mean, it may come out in the course of conversation, but what they really want to talk about is themselves. And the disappointment. I'll never forget Marie talking about the disappointments that she felt, and like how she thought that The Killing was going to change her career, and then when it didn't, I mean, it was just bitterly disappointing to her. And that was it. Just going with that and realizing that I can actually make that the point of this story and not be afraid of hurting her feelings or anything. I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that developing this trust with them so that I could write stuff that wasn't, some fake uplifting version of their life story, but really was their life story. And that's good. It's not, I was not being judgmental in any way, because look, I they appreciated me because I was showing their movies. If I wasn't, I sometimes wonder if they didn't first know me as this guy who was putting on a movie show and inviting them to get the applause of the audience, would they have been as open? I wonder, because they appreciated the fact that I gave them a last hurrah. And I think that went a long way towards their being as wide open as they were in the interviews.
Yeah, and I know I've said this before, but it is my favorite book of yours because I think it just
Thank you.
gives just such an insight into these women themselves, just as people, but also, the way the industry works and what it means to be a woman, to be a woman, to be an actress, woman actress, and that kind of transition into not being in that profession anymore in the way that women are, because, it's just different for women. It's not like Harrison, and that's still true. It's still true.
Hmm.
We have these old fogies like Harrison Ford, grinding out another Indiana Jones film, you know what I mean? And it's not that way for women. It just isn't,
Right.
and at some point they have to face that part of aging and what that means. And it was just very, and also it's just fun because these women are so different from one another, because I think it's very easy to think all actresses are the same. You kind of hear that a lot. And each person had their own individual life, and it's just really interesting. I just found it's a great book. I'm really excited that it's getting re-released because I really want people to read it.
Thanks, Anne. I appreciate that very, very much. And it's interesting that like at the Noir City Festival that's coming up in LA, I was very happy that I mean it was a fortuitous situation that I did that radio show with Jennifer Tilly
Yeah.
that opened the door to her agreeing to appear with Bound. And then when I presented that idea to the American Cinematheque, Grant Moninger, who is the head programmer there, he said, "Hey, are there any other, contemporary noir films that we can show that fit into the general concept of what we were calling Dark City Dames, but female protagonists, right?" And so that allowed us to program this other stuff with actresses who are going through the very same thing that those original Dark City Dames went through, right? So
Yeah.
so we're showing, Linda Fiorentino is like out of show business, right? Because her whole career went sideways. I wish I would love to do an interview with her, but and she was exactly the same model as like an Audrey Totter or somebody who played that character. She was the strong, she was a modern equivalent of a noir dame,
Hmm.
not just in The Last Seduction, but in virtually everything she did, right? And Annette Bening and Angelica Houston and The Grifters and Nicole Kidman and Destroyer, which is a fantastic movie. She's going through that phase of her career now. And then obviously both Jennifer and Gina Gershon. Gina Gershon has made more than her share of noir,
Yeah.
neo noir films, but they're all going through that same experience now of like, at what can I transition into having a career where I don't have to be the me I was when I was 30,
Yeah.
right? Will the business still accept me? And I think that's just a tremendous challenge for everybody, but especially for women in the business. That is a tough one. Anyway,
Okay.
okay, last question.
This is Bill from Pleasant Hill, California.
Pleasant Hill.
Should you ever do a Kitty Farrell follow-up submitted for your approval, her male counterpart, Raymond Purr? This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
That's great. Uh, I'll make a deal with you, Bill. You need to tell us your full name, because if I do a Kitty Farrell follow up and we use Raymond Purr, which is fantastic, thank you for that. I will acknowledge you in the book for coming up with that name, Raymond Purr. I can't believe that in Kitty Farrell, the villain in the Kitty Farrell book, um, which is I can't remember the name now, but it's a play on rabbit. It's like Lapin or something, and but it was based on Raymond Burr. like I said, no, it's a bunny, but it's a huge bunny, and it's kind of I just imagined it as like Raymond Burr, but I never thought cleverly of Raymond Purr. That's pretty good. Okay. And
Okay.
here's the last little note on that. Because a lot of people have said, is there going to be a second Kitty Farrell book? And I'm going to give myself a little credit, but maybe this is the reason there isn't one in the pipeline. I made sure that I retained the rights to the character. So Kitty Farrell belongs to me. So, um, if somebody, because I said, if somebody comes along and says, wow, this would make a great animated TV series, I wanted to own the character so they'd have to pay me if they wanted to do Kitty Farrell, right? If it's a gumshoe cat that isn't named Kitty Farrell, I kind of have no claim to that. But if you want to do it and you want to name it Kitty Farrell, you got to pay me. So, but by that token, that may be why there isn't a second book, because the publisher may feel like, why do we want to do it again? Because if we promote the hell out of this and it becomes a big thing, we're going to get less money than we would have otherwise, because they got to pay that guy first. So
Yeah.
who knows how how that will shake out. But there was no way I was going to let them take it. And I'm not saying this of running press. I'm just saying that in the way deals get made and all that kind of stuff, I could see myself totally left out. And I didn't want that to happen. So that's the scoop. Okay. So we did pretty good.
We did.
That was, and good questions. Good questions. So we'll try to do this again. I know everybody just needs to know that Anne, I'm not going to say she presses me, but Anne is very good and organized and trying to get a regular schedule going for this. Much appreciated. It's sometimes a little tricky. If you want to do one next week, we could probably do one.
We should do that.
But it would have to be a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
But I will be back right here from, I'm going on the road and then coming back and then going on the road again and then coming back and then going on the road again and then coming back.
I think we should do that because next week's, when we're filming this, is right before North City starts. Then you're back, and then you're back down there weekend, and then we only got a couple weeks till TCM, so I kind of want to get as many in the can as we can.
Good. Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, now I'm gonna go feed Tizzy, and I'm gonna go take my wife out to dinner. And I hope I don't mix those up.
Yes, please. Don't get those mixed up.
I'll take Tizzy out to dinner, to a nice, elegant restaurant, candlelight dinner, and give Kathleen some ocean whitefish and some dry kibble. I don't think she'd go for that. Okay, Anne, good to see you. I'm sorry about your little punch in the face, but I'm sure it will heal in no time.
I'm sure it will be fine. Excuse me. Good night, everybody.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Good night.